Hi, I'm Eric Westrich, and you're watching Startup Show San Diego, a startup TV show about startup companies. And here, this week, we're at Startup Week, San Diego Startup Week, big story, and HQ for Startup Week this week is at WeWork CoWork. And we're here with one of the authors of one of the first startup books I ever read, Lean Entrepreneur, co-founder, founder, some say grandfather, some say godfather of the San Diego startup community, Brant Cooper. Thank you for being here and thank you for what you do.
Happy to be here, Eric. Thanks for having me.
So, when did you first come to this scene and what was it like?
Well, first came to the San Diego startup scene 2007. So I moved down from the Bay Area, where I was involved in the startup scene for about 10 years up there, lived through the dot-com boom and bust, and moved down here. I actually went to high school down here. My mom was born down here, so I'm from San Diego. And the first integration into the startup scene back in 2007, 2008 was pretty rough, to tell you the truth. There was not a lot going on. We had the economic collapse, and we had a lot of what I call the legacy startup institutions here that were supporting startups in the 90s and the 2000s. And 2007, 2008, they didn't seem to be real relevant with this, with the new emerging startups that came up out of the crash. So I was a domain expert, a mentor at Connect, and then after a couple of years decided to go off on my own and sort of make my own stamp on the San Diego startup scene to try to bring together who I considered to be the real entrepreneurs. They were here. They just weren't participating in the typical startup events back in those days.
So what was your biggest challenge? Why weren't people participating, and what did you do to make that happen?
So I think that there was just a sea change, right? And actually economic collapse often does bring sea change. You get startups that are sort of wiped off the face of the earth due to the collapse. You had the iPhone come out in 2007 and it really started kicking it in 2008. And so that changes the startup environment. And of course, the digital side of marketing and growth hacking and all of that sort of thing, the scene just changed. It went from sort of bigger chip type companies, satellite companies out of Qualcomm, maybe some wireless. That was sort of the way it was pre-2007, 2008. And afterwards, you started getting app developers and software companies and some of these other types of startups. And so their needs and their wants and their desires were just fundamentally different. And so I went to, there was a group called Tech Cocktail that was traveling around the country, and they would do local startup cocktail hours. And I went to one of those downtown, and then I went to Full On Reason's March Mingle, and that was another example. And I go, wow, this is here where the real entrepreneurs are. And so what I did is I tried to replicate meetups and get-togethers that were similar to the ones that I experienced up in Silicon Valley. So I started San Diego Tech Coffee, and that was really for people that were, this was kind of pre-co-working revolution too. And so for a bunch of people that were doing startup things out of their home, the idea was just, hey, let's go hang out at a coffee shop and talk to each other about our startups and that sort of thing. So I started that. And then I started San Diego Tech Founders, and that was supposed to be a bigger meetup. We had monthly meetups where I would bring down real speakers, real entrepreneurs that the entrepreneurs want to hear from. So, not really, not Southern California people, but Eric Ries, Steve Blank from Silicon Valley, Dave McClure, Sean Ellis, Charles Hudson, who's a venture capitalist up there, and then Brad Feld and David Cohn from Techstars. So just, the entrepreneurs down here knew those people, and that's who they wanted to hear from. And so that was what I was trying to do in my monthly meetup is only charge, the entrepreneurs $10 so they could afford to come. They could drink all the beer that they want for that $10, by the way, and get speakers down there so that we would get between 100 and 200 startup people. There weren't service providers, there weren't insurance agents trying to give you card, there weren't lawyers. They were startup employees, startup founders getting together, socializing, listening to great speakers, and then helping each other out to get the startups. And so, so to me, that was sort of like a big change that happened, and really kind of getting that startup community back together and get their juices flowing again.
What do you think caused the big trend, the big move, when the wheels started to turn after all that pushing on the boulder? When do you think it really started to roll, and what do you think did that?
Well, I think that part of that is, listen, when Brad Feld came through here and he talked at my meetup, the thing that he stressed, he had just come out with his book about startup communities, and I love that book, and I think people that are interested in building startup communities should read the book. But the key message to me was that the startup community should be run for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. And so to me, that was the fundamental difference, is that when we started rallying these people together and there was these different meetups going on, and the meetups were not only specialties in certain types of programming languages, but UX meetups and marketing meetups. And so you sort of had these domain expert type of meetups, but they were run by entrepreneurs, and so that brought other entrepreneurs out. So I really think that that's one facet that helped turn things around. Also, really, we've been in sort of a long, maybe painfully slow recovery from the economic collapse, but it's also been a long growth cycle. And so inevitably, startups were going to start coming back in San Diego. Without me doing anything, without anybody doing anything, startups were going to come back. So I don't want to claim that, I made this big sea change happen. Change was happening with or without me. Hopefully, maybe I added a little bit of juice to it. But so I think just economic recovery and the fact that, and this is a lot of what I talk about in the Lean Entrepreneur, right? The costs of building startups have gone down so much that people can get out and start building products and start testing their products in the marketplace with very little money. So even though there wasn't great seed capital in San Diego in that time frame, 2012, 2013 is I think when it really started taking off, you had startups anyway, right? Bootstrapping was a viable way to build a business, and then maybe you can go raise some money after you've proven the viability of your business model. And really, frankly, that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be from the investor's perspective. It's the way that it should be from the entrepreneur's perspective. So I think that there's a number of factors that came together at about the time that meant that, hey, San Diego was a good place for it to happen as well.
So what do you think's changed since your Brant Rants 2013 article to today? What's changed since then?
Well, so again, I think, if you look at Startup Week, if you look at San Diego Startup, the group, it's run by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. And so I think that the momentum that organization and that event has is directly related to entrepreneurs that are going to do it, and they know what's going to provide value to other entrepreneurs. And so that's what gathers more people in, and it sort of builds its own momentum. I also think that San Diego has this unique opportunity. We're a large, successful, eclectic county, metropolitan area, but none of the different scenes in San Diego are so big that they want to keep out other people. You know what I mean? Like, sure. If you look at the innovation economy, in my view, it's not just startups or it's not just tech, but it's life sciences. It's bio, it's wireless, it's it's our border relationship with Tijuana and Ensenada, and in Mexico. It's frankly, it's the art community, it's the maker community, it's urban planning. There's all of these different groups inside of San Diego are not so big that they dominate anything. Whereas if you're in New York City or Silicon Valley, arts is its own thing, and it's big enough to survive on its own. And the same with tech, and life sciences is separate. And so they're going to be sort of these siloed innovation parts. Whereas in San Diego, we can bring them all together. So I think that that's one of our big objectives, is sort of build a big tent for anybody that is creative and inspirational and wants to change the world. Then they can all be part of the innovation economy that's being built here. And
some of those communities are trying to be that infrastructure that goes across all, like the makers and like Don Norman's design group he started. They're trying to be that thing that feeds all those communities.
Exactly right. And again, to me, it ranges from the artists to the social impact entrepreneurs, and it doesn't matter what the domain is. So one of the mistakes that ecosystems make sometimes is that they think that they have to declare what industry, like what vertical are they going to do? Oh, well, we're going to be data analytics and wireless. And frankly, it doesn't work that way. We weren't wireless until Qualcomm, right? And so Silicon Valley supposedly couldn't do end user, consumer app plays until Facebook, right? So it's actually exits that determine what a community's forte, and you can't actually predict it and work on it beforehand. Entrepreneurs are going to be who they are, and they're going to solve the problems they want to solve. It's not based upon some sort of declaration that we are this type of ecosystem. And so, to me, you want to give everybody access, and you want to increase the diversity, and you want to build collaboration among those diverse groups, because that's actually where real innovation happens.
So what do you think the best thing that's going on here at Startup Week this year? I mean,
My
basically
talk,
now,
of course. No, I'm kidding. Well, I think it's great that we celebrate. Again, we don't celebrate just tech. We celebrate that we've got an amazing craft brew industry, and we've got an emerging cannabis industry. And so I love that. I mean, and we've got a great maker community, and so we keep adding tracks, and we build tracks based upon the fact that we've got passionate entrepreneurs that are doing real things in all these endeavors.
They're based on the conversations that are going on.
That's right.
The tracks aren't forced. It's listening to what's going on and saying there's enough interest to create a track. And I think we're up to 12. Yeah.
But like I was saying before, it would be hard to do that under one umbrella in Silicon Valley, because each one of those tracks represents an industry that's so large. Here in San Diego, we have a unique opportunity, in my belief, to have this big tent that includes all of those under that one tent. And I think that that's unique.
So with startups, you really can't have a crystal ball, because nobody knows what you're doing. But if you were going to get out your crystal ball, what would you say that San Diego looks like in the next few years that's significant?
Wow, I think that it's a great question. I mean, I think that what we really need are exits. And so I think that we're building a lot of momentum right now. But we still need, we've got some good acquisitions under our belt, and really I think acquisitions is probably, trend-wise, we're going to see more acquisitions than public offerings. But it wouldn't be bad if we could get, like a techie type of huge acquisition or IPO or something like that. That would, that's really, in the end, that's what increases the flow of money. So startups and the ecosystem can beg for more venture capital to emerge in San Diego, but investment follows returns. So we have to have great exits, or we have to have an IPO or something in order to attract more investment money, and I think that would be a good thing. Other than that, I think that the opportunity that I think San Diego will seize is around increasing the diversity and reaching out to different parts of the ecosystem and the economy that don't necessarily have great access yet.
Fantastic. And so diversity, a lot of that going on there. So if somebody wants more of Brant's Rants, or to find out what you're doing, or to read Lean Entrepreneur, what's the best place to keep track of Brant Cooper and what you're doing? Sure.
So thank you for that. I'm at Brant Cooper on all social media, so I connect with me wherever you'd like. My email is brant@brantcooper.com, and I do reply to all emails, so people should feel free to reach out. I don't blog actively, but there's some interesting articles. Maybe you might find them interesting at marketbynumbers.com. My company is Moves the Needle, and basically what I do there is I teach large enterprises how to act more entrepreneurially. And so we've got a great podcast at movestheneedle.com, and some free tools that both startups and large enterprises can download if they'd like to learn how to apply lean startup or lean innovation techniques to whatever endeavor they're working on.
Brant, thank you for everything you've done and what you do.
Thanks for having me.
Here, and thank you for watching.